Hello, and welcome to MDIC's Annual Public Forum. During today's session, you will hear an update on MDIC's collaborative efforts to develop a framework for benchmarking cybersecurity maturity of the global medical technology industry. Led by MDIC Data Science and Technology Program Director Jitesh Patil. Please make sure to join in the conversation on Twitter by following at MDIC Annual Forum and using the hashtag MDICAPF2020. Now, please welcome session moderator Jitesh Patil.
Thank you for tuning in. Welcome everyone to another episode of Medical Device Innovation Consortium 2020 Annual Public Forum. I'm Jitesh Patil, Program Director for Data Science and Technology Portfolio at MDIC. Data Science and Technology includes areas such as cybersecurity, digital health, computation modeling and simulation, external evidence methods for clinical trial data. This year, MDIC APF is offered as a series of virtual events instead of a full-day in-person event in Washington, D.C. We are having free public sessions focused on various topics relevant to medical device and diagnostic stakeholders on every Thursday from June 19th through September 24th, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. US Eastern Time. If you have missed any of the previous sessions, please do visit our website, mdic.org, to view the recordings. Also, you can see the complete details of upcoming sessions and register. In addition to the current and past APF contents, you will also find a lot of regulatory science resources developed by MDIC community freely available through our website. You can also find information on how your organization can become an MDIC member and get involved in various collaborative work groups in pre-competitive space, focusing on advancing regulatory science for medical device sector for the betterment of patients we all strive to serve. Our session today focuses on medical device cybersecurity. MDIC is actively involved in various efforts in improving medical device cybersecurity, both internally and externally. Last year, MDIC released best practices white paper on coordinated vulnerability disclosure, CVD, and an online educational case study video to increase awareness on CVD policies. Currently, MDIC cyber program focuses on two areas. One is on threat modeling, and the second one is on MedTech cybersecurity benchmarking. You will hear about both in today's session. We have three speakers today. First, you will hear from Jessica Wilkerson, who is the Senior Cyber Policy Advisor at CDRH, US FDA. She also represents FDA in the MDIC Cybersecurity Steering Committee. Our second speaker is Adam Shostak, who is the leading expert in threat modeling. He is part of MDIC working group on threat modeling, bootcamps, and playbook. Then we will hear from Rob Suarez, who is CISO for BD, and he is also the chair for MDIC Cybersecurity Steering Committee. Rob Suarez leads MDIC's MedTech Cyber Maturity Benchmarking Initiative. All the speakers will be available for Q&A session after their prepared presentations. Please do type in your questions in the Q&A window in Zoom webinar menu. With that, now I turn over to Jessica Wilkerson from FDA. Jessica.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Wilkerson, and I am a cyber policy advisor with the Food and Drug Administration. And along with my fellow panelists, Adam and Rob, I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about what the healthcare sector, specifically the medical device sector, is doing to advance cybersecurity and advance patient safety across the sector. To do that, I first have to start out with something that is FDA's guiding star and is the guiding star for everyone in the healthcare sector, but it is worth repeating, and it is worth repeating as often as possible. And that's this: medical device cybersecurity is a patient safety concern. That is what we are here to do. We are here to make sure that patients have access to the best medical devices that they can, to the safest medical devices that they can, and that we do everything possible to help advance their health. And this is the way that FDA has really started to approach these issues in the last couple of years. As some of you may know, FDA recently reorganized its pre- and post-market offices so that the pre-market and post-market offices work together in a more seamless fashion to work on what is called a product's total product life cycle. So it's no longer divided into when a device is put onto the market and when a device is being reviewed, but one feeds the other. Things that are happening in the post-market are transitioned into lessons learned into the pre-market. And in this way, the review process is sped up, it's made more efficient, And we generally become better and quicker at looking at issues that may arise, especially in cybersecurity, where technology evolves so fast that our process has to continually evolve just like that technology in order to keep up. There are two other things that are going on at FDA that groups like MDIC and MITRE and other public-private partnerships are helping us do to even further advance this work. One of them is threat modeling. And so some of you may in fact have already seen this, may have participated, but FDA is working with MDIC and MITRE to essentially approach something called threat modeling, the process by which organizations take their products and put them into an environment and they look at the cybersecurity risks that may arise. And in this way, they learn how to anticipate what could go wrong so that they can put in place proactive measures to prevent whatever it could be. And what MDIC and MITRE are helping us do is not only further advance the science of threat modeling, but they're helping us train the industry to do it. One event has already taken place called the Threat Modeling Bootcamp, the Train the Trainers Threat Modeling Bootcamp, where experts from across the sector from medical device companies were brought to a place when we were all allowed to go to places together, and were taught by an expert in the sector who you're going to hear from a little bit later, Adam, on how to do threat modeling, how to approach it specifically from a medical device context. And this is going to be hugely valuable for the sector as we move forward because, as many of you know, cybersecurity is not a checklist exercise. It's something that you have to really learn from and look at, and it's very unique from device to device, from environment to environment, and even in some cases from patient to patient. And so this ability to threat model really cannot be overstated how valuable it is. And the other thing that's happening with this effort, this threat modeling effort that MDIC and MITRE are helping us do, is it's not just going to be these events, these train the trainer boot camps, these other boot camps that we're going to be having a little bit later this year, but they're putting together a playbook. And this playbook is going to be available for all to use to really look at their own products and use to leverage the expertise that goes into it to learn how to do threat modeling for themselves. And we're very excited about this, not only because of the product itself, but because this is not something that FDA or even MDIC or even MITRE is doing on its own. Industry is helping us design this playbook. So it's something for industry, by industry, with the expertise of FDA, MITRE, and MDIC built into it as well. And so you'll hear a little bit more about this from Adam, but I'm also going to go into the next thing that FDA has really been working on the past couple of months, and we're very excited to work with our industry partners to do, and that's benchmarking. Now, cybersecurity, what it means to be good at cybersecurity is complicated. If you ask somebody what it means, you're going to get a different answer from one person to the next. And this complicates policy efforts, and this complicates efforts to try and see, is the sector really growing? Is it improving? Are we doing better? What can we do? What are the areas of weakness? And so what MDIC is doing with this benchmarking product, along with FDA and the industry, is figuring out, okay, how do we figure out what the measures and metrics are for being good at cybersecurity? And once we've identified those metrics, what it's going to allow us to do is start measuring the sector's progress. We'll be able to see, are we improving? Are we not improving? What are the areas that we need to look at and focus on? What are the things that we're doing well? And this is going to really help the sector mature. And so we're very excited to continue working on this project with MDIC and very excited to see where it goes in the future. Now, most of the things that I've talked about already are internal to the FDA. What I want to talk about now is some of the things that FDA is doing externally, again with external partners, to advance some of the things within medical device cybersecurity. One of the biggest ones, and this is also something that we owe a great deal to MDIC for helping us carry through, is coordinated disclosure. MDIC, along with MITRE and the FDA, have worked for years to increase the adoption of something called coordinated disclosure. And this is the idea that cybersecurity is so complicated that sometimes it's not an organization who designed a product itself that realizes there could be a problem with that product. Sometimes it's just a third-party security researcher. And these have made it into the news for the past couple of years for quite some time, where you have independent researchers who have just approached companies and said, hi, I've found a problem with your product and I'd like to report it. And the interesting thing is if you look at the past couple of years, this was not necessarily a well-accepted way of operating, even just several years ago. But now, because of some of the things that MDIC has helped us do, because of efforts that FDA has undertaken, along with MITRE, along with the industry, along with other partners, coordinated disclosure has become a bedrock effort for many organizations when they are approaching cybersecurity. It has become something that they rely on. It's something that whose value that they truly recognize. And this has really helped move the industry forward when it comes to cybersecurity, because that collaboration has really unlocked so much potential for everyone to move forward and do better, to make better medical devices that are safer and more effective. So we very much love it. We continue to work on it as well. And we continue to encourage everyone to do it. And with that in mind, one of the things that we are doing, and you'll hear about this for any of you who are attending the DEF CON Safe Mode, the virtual DEF CON this year, big cybersecurity conference, usually takes place in Vegas, something called We Hard Hackers. And this is an engagement with security researchers that the FDA has undertaken for the past several years. Again, just recognizing how valuable they are to the ecosystem, to patient safety, to all of these things. And so we very much look forward to continuing to participate in the We Hard Hackers effort and encourage anyone who believes they have a role there, whether they are an independent security researcher, a medical device company, a hospital, whatever the case may be, to get involved as well. The next thing that I want to talk about is also something that FDA considers very critical. It showed up in the 2018 draft pre-market guidance, and it's something that FDA has worked on with other federal government partners, industry, and others for many years now, and that's software bill of materials. Now, we have not been the agency primarily leading this. We have been instead partnering with the NTIA on their process to figure out how we do something called software transparency. Software transparency, software bill of materials, essentially synonymous terms. But this is the idea that you can't protect what you don't know you have, right? And so if you have a medical device, medical devices, along with every other piece of modern technology today, are built out of other smaller pieces of technology. They're built out of software libraries, hardware chips, whatever the case may be. But oftentimes, the finished product is not provided with a list of what those technologies are. There's no nutrition label for software products that says, you know, this product was built out of this piece of software and this other piece of software. And this creates issues when vulnerabilities come up, because you have organizations who then have to try and figure out that information in real time, if they even can. And so in instances we've seen, like the 2017 global outbreak of the WannaCry ransomware, along with the outbreak of the NotPetya ransomware, this creates huge, huge, huge problems for not only the healthcare sector, but for almost all other sectors when they're trying to do coordinated vulnerability response. And so the FDA, in recognition of this fact, and working with the industry and working with other parts of the federal government, have been pushing for the development of software bill of materials. We have worked with the NTIA and others to figure out, what does the software bill of materials need to look like? What are the minimum components that need to be included? Who needs to get them and when? And through this process, which industry has said, which FDA has participated in, we've started to answer some of these questions. And in this way, we are going to continue to move the sector forward. We are going to continue to advance the state of cybersecurity and medical devices. And so we very much look forward to the continued work at the NTIA. We look forward to the implementations that some organizations within the healthcare sector have already done. And we look forward to this being a continuing conversation as we continue to adapt and evolve what we do for medical device cybersecurity through software bill of materials as the conversation continues. You know, there are two other things that I really quickly want to touch on that are very important to FDA's current cybersecurity work. One of them is the legacy device issue. Now, it's probably not a surprise to anyone listening today that legacy devices are a huge part of the cybersecurity problem. We keep devices in use for many, many, many years, but technology changes incredibly fast. Something that's considered new today, new and cutting edge, might be considered old and outdated within just a couple of months, depending. And in the medical space, in the cybersecurity space, this creates issues because as technology ages, it begins to get more and more vulnerable. As security researchers or others continue to examine the cybersecurity controls and things like that, more issues are typically found. But the problem is, they're not always easy to fix. Sometimes legacy technology does not include ways to update. It does not include ways to patch. And so we have to figure out as a sector, what do we do about these things? But one thing that we have to recognize is that it's not as simple as just replacing devices. They're expensive. Sometimes they are incredibly difficult to move. You need a forklift. That's a huge logistical undertaking. And for hospitals who are already strapped for cash, who are trying to figure out how to provide the best care for patients with the limited resources that they have, replacing legacy devices cannot always be the priority. And so the FDA is working with something called the Healthcare Sector Coordinating Council, other parts of the government, and industry to examine these issues and try and find ways to address them that are reasonable, that are feasible, and that take into consideration the equities not only of the FDA, but of healthcare delivery organizations, medical device manufacturers, patients, and others. And one thing that I want to really highlight on this so that folks are aware is the fact that, before, there wasn't necessarily agreement on what it meant for a device to be legacy. And this is part of the reason why the legacy device problem was so difficult to solve. We didn't have a single term, so we didn't always talk about the same things. Sometimes we ended up talking past each other. But recently, the FDA, in coordination with the International Medical Devices Regulators Forum, the IMDRF, has created a definition for legacy that the FDA is now using to help facilitate this conversation. And so that definition, a legacy device is a device that cannot be reasonably protected against current cybersecurity threats. And having this definition is allowing us to coalesce the conversation about, okay, what do we do about this now? What does it mean for a device to be reasonably protected against current cybersecurity threats? What is a current cybersecurity threat? And by doing this, we're able to focus a conversation that has been very broad, almost inapproachably broad, and it's letting us actually move it forward. And so between the IMDRF definition, between the work that is going on at the Healthcare Sector Coordinating Council's Legacy Device Group, we are very much starting to make progress, and we are making progress in a collaborative fashion with all of us working together to see where we can go with this issue. Now, I just have one last thing that I want to touch on. And this is another task group underneath the Healthcare Sector Coordinating Council. And this is around vulnerability communications. Now, I don't know how many of you listening today are cybersecurity experts who can take something like a Department of Homeland Security cybersecurity advisory and know exactly what it means. You can follow all the technical lingo, all of it makes perfect sense to you. But for many people who now rely on vulnerability communications, that's not the case. They're lay people, they're not computer scientists, they're not electrical engineers. They don't necessarily know what they're being told. And that, for people who may be relying on these devices for their daily lives, especially for patients who might be relying on this for their daily care, that can be very frustrating and that can be very frightening. And so what the Vulnerability Communications Task Group is doing is acknowledging that problem and, again, beginning to work across the government, across the private sector, across healthcare delivery organizations and medical device manufacturers to look at what can we do better when it comes to vulnerability communications. How can we ensure that they're reaching the right people at the right time and they're using the right language so that folks who really need to be able to rely on them to take that information and do something with it can. And so that work is continuing. We very much look forward to seeing what comes out of that. And for both of these groups, for the Vulnerability Communications Task Group and for the Legacy Device Task Group, for those of you who are not currently involved with the Healthcare Sector Coordinating Council, but think that these are valuable efforts and think that you have something to contribute, we very much encourage you to get involved where you can. Now, I have spent quite a bit of time already talking today about the things that FDA is doing, and we're incredibly excited to be doing them. So thank you so much for the time and attention to do this. But now I am going to stop talking and I'm going to turn you over to Adam Shostak, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about the threat modeling work that I had brought up a little bit earlier. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you later.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm Adam Shostak, and I've been working in threat modeling for 20 years or so, and wanted to start out with the question of why do we threat model? Because if we can agree on the questions, that's halfway to solving the problems. And so when I think about why do we need to threat model? Why is medical device innovation changing? And this is obvious, but it's important to state. Software is becoming a bigger and bigger piece of how we innovate in medical devices. And the ways in which we develop software impact the security of the systems that we're building. It's not really feasible to bolt security on or sprinkle some security onto a system once it's been built. And many of you in this community have felt that viscerally as you deal with the vulnerabilities and problems that you didn't pick up while the system was being designed. And so why threat model is because we need techniques that help us integrate security into the system as it's being developed. So there's a number of ways we might go about integrating security into medical devices. The first is what we've been doing. We can wait for researchers to find problems and we can attempt to patch them and get the patches out into the field where they'll actually protect people. Another way, and this is important to do, we can use safer frameworks. If we use more modern languages, if we use more modern compilers, they have protections built in, and those are great. But we also need ways to bake security in at the design level. And this is not a product that you can buy. It's a process. It's a change to the way your engineers think about how to deliver a product. And so it's going to take some time and energy to succeed. So how to framework? There's a 4-question framework that I like to use. And the questions are, what are we working on? What can go wrong? What are we going to do about it? Did we do a good job? These 4 simple questions are questions that you ought to be able to answer as you're developing a product. You can answer them very simply and informally. You can go into incredible depth in any one of them or in all of them. And by having this consistent framework that we can apply, we can generate a structured set of answers. We can approach our product systematically. We can think comprehensively about security before we've even written a line of code. So there's structures that help us answer the questions. For example, if we're using data flow diagrams to express the way data flows through a system, this can be a very helpful part of threat modeling, of saying, what are we working on? And it's helpful because threats tend to follow the data. There's message sequence diagrams, there's state machines, there's all sorts of ways to address the question of what are we working on. There are multiple ways of addressing the question, what can go wrong? There's a mnemonic stride, there's a system of kill chains, and each of these helps us organize our thinking. So STRIDE, for example, stands for spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privilege. And these buckets or groups of threats occur in all sorts of systems. And so we can use the structure of STRIDE to help us think through what can go wrong. And so these threat modeling techniques can be applied in a very simple and direct way. They can be applied in a very nuanced way. And what makes sense for your product is what makes sense for your product. But threat modeling, answering those 4 questions, knowing that you've done a good job, is an important part of innovating as more and more medical devices become software-centric and software-dependent. Threat modeling gives us the structured, systematic, and comprehensive approach to security that modern medical devices demand. I'm really excited to be working with the MDIC, MITRE, and the FDA on finding the tools that we need to enable this community to bring security engineering, including threat modeling, to the ways in which you're delivering medical devices. If you're not participating in the boot camps, if you're not engaged in the playbook process, please get involved. This is important work for patient safety, and together we're going to make a big difference. So with that, I'm pleased to hand it over to Rob Suarez, who's the CISO of BD and the chair of the Cybersecurity Steering Committee at the MDIC. Rob?
Thank you, Adam. Hi to everyone. My name is Rob Suarez, and I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for BD, and I'm also the chair of the MDIC Cybersecurity Working Group. BD is a leading medical technology company offering some of the most advanced products across the continuum of care, from diagnostics to the delivery of medication. We offer medical devices and software-based solutions to support healthcare providers. And it's my responsibility to make sure our products and the environments in which they reside in are secure and resilient in a rapidly changing environment. So whether you represent a medical device manufacturer or a healthcare delivery organization, we all share common goals in protecting patient safety and privacy, while increasing our resilience in healthcare and continuously improving our maturity in cybersecurity. In order to help us collectively achieve these goals, it's time to develop a cybersecurity benchmark for medical technology. And the good news is we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The map exists today in the MedTech Joint Security Plan and its maturity model metrics, which allow organizations to assess their structure and governance, risk management, design control, and complaint handling capabilities. The MedTech Joint Security Plan uses CMMI, which stands for the Capability Maturity Model Integration, to define how we measure the maturity of cybersecurity capabilities throughout the life cycle of medical technology in design, development, and maintenance. Through partnership with MDIC, medical device manufacturers, regulators, and industry stakeholders, we're all looking to establish this benchmark to help organizations assess their current cybersecurity maturity and define what is the next component, the next phase in their own improvement plans, and making this relative to their industry peers. So whether you're a large or small organization, together we can get there faster. Here's what this would look like in action. And an organization that participates in this benchmarking initiative will use the MedTech Joint Security Plan to measure their cybersecurity maturity across their organization, or for an individual product. That organization will then share their metrics with MDIC for anonymous benchmarking. The participating organization will also develop improvement plans based on their own scores or relative to the industry benchmark. And after implementing those improvement plans, that organization can track their progress and repeat the benchmarking process on a reoccurring basis. The MDIC working group is looking for volunteers to help us develop the process behind generating this industry benchmark for MedTech cybersecurity. Once we have the back end in place, we're looking for organizations who would be willing to assess their cybersecurity maturity and anonymously contribute their own metrics so that we can establish this benchmark. The results of the benchmarks would be published for organizations who wish to adopt the MedTech Joint Security Plan and measure their own maturity and or establish improvement plans. So to participate in this initiative, please contact MDIC at the email address provided below. So, in conclusion, we have an exciting opportunity here to collectively improve our cybersecurity maturity as an industry. I'd like to thank Jitesh Vital at MDIC, Jessica Wilkerson at the FDA, Chris Tyberg from Abbott, Ken Hoyme from Boston Scientific, and also Tyrone Higgins from BD for supporting the MDIC Cybersecurity Benchmarking Initiative. Also, on behalf of MDIC, I'd like to thank all of our presenters today, and thank you for your time and interest in medical device cybersecurity.
Thank you for attending MDIC's annual public forum. We hope you will join us for next week's session for a discussion on case for quality, including the Make Kappa Cool pilot study and the CFQC Suite Leadership Workstream. Visit apf.mdic.org for more information and to catch up on previous sessions.